Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com, your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we're discussing a model launched back in 2001, a gloriously thin manual wind dress watch. It's the Vacheron Constantin Patrimony Small Second. Now, the watch is 35 millimeters in diameter in white gold. It is only 6.8 millimeters thick and a wonderfully compact 40.8 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip with an 18 millimeter spacing between the lugs. The watch was built in the early 2000s and it was one of the last to bear the so-called a priori marks, or the sigma dials. This was originally conceived in the 70s by a Swiss precious metals trade group that encouraged watchmakers to put this symbol on dials that employed white gold, yellow gold, or rose gold hands, logos, and indices. And indeed, that's what we have right here. Vacheron was one of the very last to discontinue this nostalgic signature. Taking a quick look, you can see the watch is white gold, and it's a rhodium-plated white gold, which means it's as white as platinum. Conventional white gold would be considerably warmer, duller, and darker. This is the type of white gold that, for example, Audemars Piguet uses today to create a platinum effect on a white gold watch. We'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference. And it's beautifully classical. Although this watch was made in the early 2000s, it could have been at home in the 1950s or 1960s when 35 millimeters was considered a substantial but standard size for a men's dress watch. It's super flat and slides underneath any sleeve. And by the standards of today, this is a watch that could wear on a male wrist, a female wrist. It's really unisex. Even a child could wear it well. I'm not going to give a lower rating for wrist size. This watch will wear on any wrist. And again, my wrist is 16 centimeters. Look at it over the top. The lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist. Super slim strap. You can see Vacheron factory. We have large rectangular scale alligator leather on the top in black with a monotone stitch and a sheer cut side. There's calfskin on the bottom. It's a brand new Vacheron factory strap. That calfskin on the bottom is wonderfully soft. See, made in France, probably by Camille Fournet, which is the OEM strap supplier to Vacheron. We have a simple white gold pin buckle. And you can see this was supplied by Cornu. Cornu often signs its buckles and clasps Unrock, which is Cornu backwards. So that's what that's all about. And like the watch, this is rhodium-plated white gold with that Maltese cross motif that is the symbol of the manufacturer. You could see it on the crown. You could see it on the dial. Now, this watch is seamless, and it's a backloader. So you can see how the mid-case and the bezel are all one piece. There's no seam between them because they're not separate parts. You can appreciate that the lugs are welded into the case flank, and this is an old-school way of making a case. This was done more often back when Vacheron made fewer watches because the case and the lugs are made separately. The lugs are inserted into slots in the case. They're then welded on, and all evidence of the weld is removed to create this beautifully sharp break between lugs and case. Turning to the dial, you could see that there's a little bit of a dished profile at the edge of the dial. If you look carefully, you can see there's a very subtle downturn at the edge of this silver white opaline frosted dial. By opaline, I mean it's not a directional satin grain like a sunburst. It's more of a very fine sandpaper-like texture, a very minimal frosting that glows rather than shines in the light. Now you can see there is a sub-seconds register with a counterweighted Lancet-style seconds hand, crosshair-style constant seconds. We'll wind this watch up so you can better see it. The quarter numerals are Roman, and you can see the numerals and indices as well as the hands are white golds. They won't oxidize, tarnish, or fade over time. All of the signatures are compact. There's a modesty to the size of the marquee at 12 o'clock that's often missing on modern watches. Turn it all over, and you can see possibly the best part of this watch, which is caliber 1400. It too was launched back in 2001, and it was one of the first ever manufacture movements made by Vacheron, which for most of its 2.5 centuries of existence was actually not a movement manufacturer. It was a high-level établisseur, which would organize the construction of the best parts and then assemble, finish, and regulate them. Here we have a movement that's Vacheron's own, and it's a little gem. It's rarely used today because of its small size, but it's perfectly situated in this watch, an ideal application. Let's talk about what we get. So this is the 1400 AS. It is the small second version of the 1400. You can see Geneva hallmark finish, and unlike something like a 4400, which is a later manual wind, or even the 2450s and 2460 automatics, this is very intricate in its execution. So we have Côte de Genève, you expect that. We have engine turning on the base plate, you expect that. We have a black polished stud holder and a black polished regulator. All the screw heads are black polished. Their slots and circumference are both chamfered. The wheels are satinated. Take a look. There's a lovely circular concentric graining, sometimes known as a solarization, on the ratchet wheel. But then if you look really close, you can also see that the teeth of the ratchet wheel have been microscopically beveled. Now, it's not quite microscopic, but the level of detail necessary to get in between those teeth and bevel them is extraordinary. Vacheron doesn't waste time doing that today on most of its watches, and I think that level of attention to detail and commitment is what sets these 1400s apart from the later 4400, which was a larger Vacheron manual wind movement. Another hallmark, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 interior angles where bevels meet in a sharp inward cleft. A lot of Vacheron Geneva hallmark movements today don't even have one sharp interior angle. This watch has 4. You can also see that there's a sharp outward point where two bevels meet at the outer edge of the balance cock, which is profoundly impressive. The beveling is a mile wide, bright gleaming, and done by hand. Now, in terms of technical specs, this movement is a manual wind with a 40-hour power reserve. It has a surprisingly high beat rate of 28,800 vibrations per hour. It pivots on 20 jewels. It is 20.65 millimeters in diameter and ultra thin at only 2.6 millimeters thick. The movement is adjusted in 5 positions, which is the standard for high horology as well as for chronometers. And you can appreciate that no detail is too small to be lavished with attention. This is as good as movements get. If you look carefully, you can even see that the interior of the wheels and the drivetrain, they have been internally beveled. The inner circumference of the wheel as well as the spokes, that is just not something that anyone does in a watch like this today, unless they are ultra-low volume independents. You're not going to see that today on standard manual wind watches from Vacheron, Patek, AP, or even Lange. This watch is a standout for the quality of what you get. It is immaculately executed. It's something approaching the best you can find at this price. A lot of folks ask, Tim, what is the lowest point of entry into Geneva hallmark finish? This isn't it, but this is the lowest price as an entry-level watch within the highest echelon of fine finish. And this really is as good as it gets in a 3-hand manual wind. The timepiece is 30 meters water resistant, but do not test the theory. There are better Vacheron watches to take swimming. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.